A golden generation is referring to the high level of young talent that a club or nation has coming through their youth systems over a certain period of time. But before I go any further, if you need a place where you can keep up to date with the latest transfer news, find all the match stats you need from games across the globe, and watch highlights and stream live football matches, then you need to download the OneFootball app. I use the OneFootball app because it's completely free, and not only do they have stats and transfer news, but they also have videos to watch and articles to read, which is where I get a lot of my ideas for new videos. And as I said before, you can stream live football matches and watch highlights all on the app. Downloading the OneFootball app will help support the channel as well, so I'll leave it linked in the description below. The most famous examples of the so-called golden generation in football are Manchester United's class of '92, a reference to the 1992 Youth Cup win when Beckham, Nicky Butt, Gary Neville and Ryan Giggs were all in the squad, with Paul Scholes and Phil Neville also being included in the reference, as from here on out all of the players mentioned went on to achieve incredible success with Manchester United from around 1995, when Fergie allowed Andre Kinchelskis, Paul Ince and Mark Hughes to leave the club and giving those young players the opportunity to replace them. And despite Alan Hansen's famous "you'll never win anything with kids" line, United would go on from 95 to 01 to win 5 out of 6 Premier League titles, a Champions League, 2 FA Cups, and at least 6 of those youth players were crucial first team players. In this example, the development of a golden generation literally came from giving game time immediately and taking out more experienced veteran players from certain positions to allow the youngsters to come through. Ten Hag could take eye of this, especially with United once again slow and obvious in the transfer market. Well, to a degree I guess. Instead of bringing in 2 central midfielders, Ten Hag might have to accept one and use James Garner in a starting role from the off, whilst also allowing the likes of Hannibal Mejbri and potentially one of Ethan Galbraith or Dylan Levitt to play substantial roles in the first team squad next season. I'll discuss each individual player later on in the video. Another more recent example of a golden generation would be from Pep Guardiola's 2008 Barcelona revolution. Guardiola would take an aging and declining squad containing players that didn't exactly keep themselves in Ronaldo level shape as they approached their 30s, like Ronaldinho and Deco, and he refreshed the squad, bringing in world class talent like Dani Alves and taking a chance on youth with Sergio Busquets and Pedro coming straight into starting positions from the youth team, whilst Gerard Piqué was brought in for just £4.5 million, and at the start of the summer he was seen as a Manchester United reject. But by the end of that season, when you look back at the Barcelona squad, not only do you see players like Gerard Piqué, Sergio Busquets and Pedro Rodriguez go from unknowns to top level talents, but the likes of Andres Iniesta, Xavi Hernandez and Lionel Messi went from players with huge potential to legitimate world class talents. This golden generation was not only fundamental and essential to Pep Guardiola's 08 to 2012 stint, but also for the likes of Tito Villanova, Gerardo Martino, Luis Enrique and Ernesto Valverde up until around 2018 as well. But once again, like with Manchester United's class of '92, it was thrusting young and unproven talents into pressurised starting roles without world class potential around them ready to take their position in the team after a few poor performances. And maybe that's the key to developing young players. Enough pressure where they know they have a crucial role and have to perform at their best, but also in a position where they know that they can be judged over a longer period of time than the typical 3 to 4 games that youngsters in the Premier League are usually judged on. Now obviously this wasn't exactly the case with the 2 scenarios I just mentioned, as with Barcelona and Manchester United, they're simply clubs where there is always pressure, even in declining years. But the point I was making is that it's almost as if you can find a formula to create a golden generation, and Portugal is the place where I think I can find the closest thing to an actual formula. But why Portugal? Well, as of the closing of the transfer window last summer in 2021, Benfica sat 4th for the most amount of money brought in from player sales since the turn of the century, with €1.31 billion, behind only Inter Milan, Chelsea and Juventus. And we also know that Sporting Lisbon and Porto are notorious for the players they produce for the top level of the game. Think just over the past few years, you've got Bruno Fernandes, Luis Diaz, Eder Militao and Nuno Mendes, and that's just naming a few. But why? The Portuguese and Liga NOS players are doing pretty well, with players like Ruben Dias, João Cancelo, Bernardo Silva, Diego Jota, Darwin Núñez, Luis Diaz and Bruno Fernandes now established big name Premier League players, and players like Ruben Neves, Neto and Diego Dalot are players just below that level who look like they could push into that category in the next 2 to 5 years or so. And the reason why I think Portugal is not only sending players in great quantity to the rest of Europe, in particular the Premier League sides, but also sending the quality, is because I think the Portuguese top division is the perfect bridge between European youth players and the Premier League. The level is low enough where players can be guaranteed first team action and a degree of responsibility, but if they are at a top 3 club, Sporting, Porto or Benfica, then they also get the exposure to breaking down deep defensive units when sides sit deep against them system, as well as the pressure of playing at a major club and in European competitions as well. So I think it's a blend of the league's quality, the focus on having technical gifted players in order to break down a deep defensive unit, the exposure to a big club and Europe, alongside the elite level of youth scouts, coaches and managers in Portugal. You then have the ingredients for the production of a golden generation. So what can Manchester United learn from Portuguese clubs, and more importantly, do United even have a golden generation, or are they just overhyped? Well, I'm considering this particular generation as a generation after 2022, the Erik ten Hag years, with it going on to at least 2026-2027. I believe that United have 6, potentially 7 young players who could be top level players over this period, and like Busquets and Pedro did, go from players with just potential to their name to world regarded first team starters. The first two are fullbacks, Ethan Laird and Alvaro Fernandez, as both have the pace, athleticism and physicality to perform the role of a modern day fullback to the highest level. Fernandez is a left back in the mould of someone like Theo Hernandez or Alphonso Davies, who are both probably in the top 5 best left backs in world football at the moment, as like those two, Alvaro Fernandez can drive forward with the ball at his feet, is quick off the ball, aggressive defensively and has great output in the final third, and an unusual tendency for a fullback, can score goals as well. I think that with Shaw coming off a pretty unconvincing season and Telles still failing to fully convince, if given the opportunity, Fernandez would be able to take it and thrive in that left back position. It now does look like Malacia will be joining United, so if one of Luke Shaw or Alex Telles stays, I think Fernandez should seek a loan move to a mid-table Liga NOS side or Ligue 1 side, as like I said before, I just tend to think that for players who are still raw and have not fully developed their style as a player, the best places to go are France and Portugal, and work your way up from mid-table clubs to the top 3 or 4 over a 2 or 3 year period. So I'd tell Fernandez to get a loan move to a mid-table side in France or Portugal, and then the season after that, if next season goes well, get a loan to one of Porto, Sporting or Benfica, before returning to Manchester United in the summer of 2024. I'd say the same for Ethan Laird on the right, who like Fernandez has the ability to carry the ball forward with it at his feet, is quick off the ball, and whilst I'm not claiming he's fantastic defensively, I think he's competent enough for it to be a base for him then to rapidly improve his game. He has a potential going forward, and so with the right coaching, I think Ethan Laird can give Dalot a very good fight for the starting spot over the next 2 to 5 years. Now, I will go through the others in just a bit, but first, what should Manchester United actually take from what the Portuguese clubs are doing? And more explicitly, is there a secret formula for creating a top level player? Well, I would say that a large reason for the success is the pressure to comfortability rate. I think with experienced veterans, the pressure in the starting 11 can be dialed up higher than for the young players. In their early 20s, late teens, as often young players can go through patches where momentum pushes their talent to unexpected heights, but they aren't able to sustain this over a longer period of time, and so instead get slapped with the label of being inconsistent. However, being the 6th biggest league in Europe and outside the traditional Big 5, Portugal's Liga NOS is away from the pressure of the Premier League, and even for mid-level players as well. This allows players to avoid the short-term critics a lot more compared to young players in England who experience it pretty much game to game. But whilst playing at the big 3 Sporting, Benfica and Porto, these players are also playing at a pretty high level, getting European football experience and playing in a team with quality individuals and under some of the best up and coming managers in Europe. Pair this with the willingness or borderline necessity to push a production line of young players into the starting 11 and the theoretical transfer market shop window, and you get 3 clubs whose whole business and transfer model is built around developing players as quickly or more correctly, efficiently as possible, and between the ages of around 23 to 26, they usually develop into top level talents. But this is surely impossible for Manchester United to recreate. After all, as soon as a young player is rumoured to be on the cusp of a first team appearance, his name is thrown around the media. Well, United should at least look to navigate this using the loan system. There are 3 real reasons for a club to loan a player out. 1, to facilitate a future deal, as Tottenham did with Christian Romero. Number 2 is to get a player's wages off of the books, as Real Madrid did with Gareth Bale when they sent him on loan to Tottenham. 3, to allow a player to develop in some kind of way, think Reece James's loan spell at Wigan, or James Garner's last season at Nottingham Forest. So obviously we only need to focus on the 3rd one for this project, but the question comes, where is the ideal loan club for players at specific stages of their development? Well, my theory, based on nothing but me thinking for a couple of minutes, is that players from Portugal seem to acclimatise to the top levels of European football a lot easier than players from the Eredivisie or even from leagues such as Serie A or the Bundesliga. And I think this because firstly, the Primeira Division in Portugal is at a high enough level where players get the perfect quality bridge from a non-top 5 European league to a league in the top 5. But it's not too hard a level where young players can't force their way into the starting 11s of the big three, as is the case with the Premier League, La Liga and Serie A at least. I kind of think that the Bundesliga uses a style of football that is very quick transitioning, meaning players have space to run into on the ball, on the attack, and space when in the final third. However, when players join top 6 clubs in the Premier League, they come up against sides who sit deep and compact, and so that space that they had in the Bundesliga isn't there, and it takes a while for them to adapt their game. Just think of players who have struggled with this move, from Sancho to Werner to Havertz, even Firmino, Thiago, and Heung-min Son took a season to really find their feet. Whereas the Portuguese Liga NOS is played in the Spanish style, where the attack is focused on intricate interplay, close ball control, and this is just at a lower standard, which allows young players to claim their starting roles. And I think young players playing regularly in Liga NOS at one of the top 3 clubs, which is going to be Sporting, Porto or Benfica, develop quicker than playing a season in any other league with any other club, the majority of the time. Obviously there are some exceptions. And so the perfect environment is created for a player to go from a promising young talent to a top level player over a 2 or 3 season period. And the years of a player's career between the ages of 20 and 23 are crucial for long-term development of that player. Any player who has the potential to be a top level player has to be playing consistently over that 3-year period in his career. If he's able to establish himself as a first team player, whether out on loan or at a permanent club, then the transformation can be rapid but consistent, and this is what I think works best for the majority of young players. The problem for Manchester United is that the young players that have established themselves in the first team, think back to Rashford, Lingard and McTominay, have never had that what I'm going to refer to as an undercover season. What I mean by this is that when a young player comes into the United first team, unlike at Porto, Benfica and Sporting where there is a degree of longevity and willingness to rely on young talent, United youngsters face a pressure and expectation immediately. I think in the future United's development method for players under the age of 22 should be this. Players fall into 3 categories: future stars, development unclear, and not good enough. The first and third categories are pretty self-explanatory, but the development unclear category is for players who, while at the moment don't have a clear path into the first team or even to the highest level, they have some potential in them. Players who are considered future stars should be first given some first team game time. For Manchester United, I've already mentioned Ethan Laird and Alvaro Fernandez, but I'd also add James Garner, Hannibal Mejbri and Alejandro Garnacho into that, along with Kobbie Mainoo, who I think will be in this so-called generation, even though I think he'll be at least 2 years behind the rest in terms of development, and I think even Antony Elanga could be included in this. Ideally, all of these players should be given some first team experience in the first half of next season. From here, Ten Hag can put them into categories of first team regulars, big potential but raw, and in need of improvement. First team regulars are obviously the players that can be relied on to be in the first team, whilst big potential but raw are for players who have the potential to be top level but are missing something from their game, and so may need specific coaching or a loan to work this out and develop his overall game. And the players in need of improvement are currently not on the path into the first team and need something, almost always a loan move, to reignite their career. Now, United aren't in what you would refer to as ideal circumstances, I think it's fair to say, so some players may need to be rushed through their development phase. However, this isn't an issue for certain players. This can actually do wonders for their careers, whereas others need a more stable rise. I think James Garner is now at the age and has proven, especially over last season, that he has to be in contention for a first team spot, either playing alongside someone like Frankie de Jong playing as a regista, or alongside a deeper ball winner like Sangare or Benacer. He is definitely a player that I think can have a similar type of development to a Sergio Busquets or David Beckham when being pushed into the first team. His long range passing is phenomenal, and at Nottingham Forest he's really developed his reading of the game, being excellent at cutting off passing lanes, and his all-round intelligence on the pitch, knowing when to play defence splitting killer passes and when to move the ball on in a quicker, safer fashion. Hannibal Mejbri, who like Garner I think falls into the future star category and a player with huge potential. However, he is a stage or two behind Garner at the moment, being just 19 years old. Mejbri right now is more of an advanced playmaker who plays in the position behind the striker but in front of the midfield. However, due to his creativity, ball control, dribbling ability, as well as him having the physicality needed, I think Mejbri can become a world-class roaming playmaker, a player who, like Mateo Kovacic, Frankie de Jong or Luka Modric, helps his sides out in all phases of play in possession, dropping deep in the build-up to use his quick passing and press resistance to beat the opposition's press, whilst in the middle third he can then look to move the ball into the final third with his incisive and long passes, as well as through carrying the ball through the centre of the pitch, and then in the final third he has the vision and weight of pass to create chances around the box. I think Mejbri would be an excellent understudy to Frankie de Jong next season, but maybe Ten Hag feels that he can't guarantee him enough playing time, and so in the case of a loan, I'd send him to France with a Ligue 1 club, or to Portugal with a Primera Division club. The reason for this is that I think French and Portuguese top divisions are the best bridge leagues for players coming to the Premier League, especially for younger players between the ages of 18 to 23. Both Ligue 1 and Liga NOS have massive teams in the league, who do go far in European competitions, and so players get a healthy balance of game time and a less intense environment alongside the pressures and experience of being at a top club like a Porto, Sporting, Marseille or Monaco. Alejandro Garnacho is the 5th player who I think should be promoted to the first team. He'd be vying with Marcus Rashford and Antony to be the 3rd choice wide attacker, with Jadon Sancho and a potential new signing being ahead of them in the pecking order. As for Kobbie Mainoo, I think he needs one more year in the under 23s, but after he is 18 I think he should be sent out on loan to the Championship or Ligue 1, as I think these leagues help young players develop their ability to deal with the physicality of senior football a lot more than other leagues, which you obviously experience a lot in central midfield. I think players like Zidane Iqbal, Teden Mengi, Ethan Galbraith, Dylan Levitt and Facundo Pellistri all need loan moves to either Ligue 1 or Championship clubs, whilst players like Brandon Williams, Amad Diallo and Shola Shortai would benefit from loan moves to either Portugal or the Eredivisie, as I think from these leagues they can develop their technical abilities in senior football before being thrown into the more physically demanding leagues, where their technical development could suffer if they went straight in too early. So, do United have a golden generation? Well, I can't say right now for sure in the same way that I can for Barcelona, or even Arsenal I would say, but come this time next year I think we could be talking about one of, if not all of, Garner, Mejbri, Laird and Garnacho being considered key first team players for Manchester United. If I had to be specific, I think both Garner and Garnacho will really establish themselves next season, and so those two are the two I'm expecting to have big seasons. So which Manchester United youngsters do you think will make a breakthrough next season? Put your thoughts in the comments section below, and check out some of my other videos linked in the description as well.